Welcome, folks, to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. By now, you probably know who I am. My name is Chris White. I'm the host of this show. And by the way, folks, these are live conversations. This is the LinkedIn Live show for pre-sales professionals and pre-sales leaders. And as I like to say, these conversations are by design, unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. And I am super delighted to welcome this week's guest. His name is Mike McDowell. He is a senior solution consultant with user testing, but more importantly, as you can see on the shirt that he's wearing, he is the author of a book I happen to be holding in my hand that I read over. In fact, I read it on a flight from Washington, D.C. to Salt Lake City 2 days ago, called Demotainment. And allow me to first just say, it's a fabulous book. And even though I'm an author, I'm going to recommend anybody and everybody listening to this that run out and get yourself a copy. Actually, you don't have to run anywhere. You can go to Amazon. Mike, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for that amazing introduction, Chris. And I was joking over the weekend. I reposted what you posted, that you read the book on the flight, and you read the whole book on the flight. And I thought, wow. Either the book's really engaging or it's just too short, because you're the third person who told me that they had read it all in one shot. But really excited to be here. I think you're like the OG of pre-sales authors, and I read your book a couple of years ago, probably the first book I read in the whole space. And I've been in SC or pre-sales for a couple of years, and I just thought this was like, all right, this is like the handbook. Everyone who starts pre-sales should read your book. So getting that praise from you, it's high praise. And I really appreciate you inviting me on the show today.
Well, I'm delighted to have you. And so, folks, just a little bit of background. Mike reached out to me, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, something like that. And he and I met for the first time, not in person. We met, through the lens of the cameras, I like to say, just last week for the first time. And I instantly knew that he had to be on the show. I couldn't wait to read his book. And in fact, as Mike said, I did so. And to be fully transparent, I didn't read the entire book. I think, let's see, if there's what, and I know you call them scenes, not chapters. If there's 16 or 17, I think I got through 13 or 14 on the plane. And then I finished when I got here.
Okay.
It is, and Mike, it's not too short in the least. I think it's the perfect length. I think it's an easy, engaging read, just the way you talk. So, Mike, do my audience a favor and introduce yourself a little bit more broadly, and take a minute and just share a little bit of your background.
Sure. So you already said who I am and what I do. Solution consultant, senior pre-sales engineer, sales engineer, whatever you want to call it. Basically, we all know what we're talking about. I've been at user testing for about 4 years now. Working in global strategic accounts, new logos, doing a lot of demos. And I come from the world of e-commerce. So I was one of the original, I was an OG web developer back in the 90s. So I worked, built some of IBM's initial websites, interned in the city. I was the first intern who didn't get coffee. I was a website manager back in 95. And then I went to work for Hertz. Everyone knows the car rental company Hertz. Basically built their first interactive website in 97. And then I was there for 22 years, doing everything from analytics to global innovation and all manner of things in between, product management, et cetera. So I was on the other side of a lot of product demos and vendors. And so, people had often told me that they said, hey, you should consider going into sales. And I thought, oh my gosh, like sales, right? There's like commissions and stuff. And I don't know if I could deal with that. That's really risky. And as luck would have it, someone from Marist, where I went to Marist College, now Marist University, as of less than a month ago. Way to go, Marist. Someone reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in coming to a sales role play? And I thought, all right, there's no harm in this. People have often said I should try sales. So let's just see what it is. So I went to this thing. I believe it was from the group Unblinded is the group. They had this event. It was called, you had to do hello to yes in 3 minutes. And it was like, all right, this is the ultimate test. And there's judges and everything. And I thought, all right. So I crafted my scenario and I said to the audience, this is who you are. This is who I'm pitching to. And at the end of it, there was a woman, Jean Good. She was one of the judges. She's at Northwestern Mutual, I believe. And she said to me, Mike, you said that you've never done sales before. And I said, yeah, this is my first time. And she's like, well, for someone who's never done sales before, you should probably be in sales. And it was only a couple of weeks after that I joined user testing, and I really, you have that what's it called, the imposter syndrome. Like, am I really cut out for this? What am I doing? And then I just tried to find my own way, my own strategy, my own method, and that's really Demotainment. That's where Demotainment comes from. I do have a theater background. Like back in college as a kid, I wanted to do theater, be an actor, but I just like Outliers. If you ever read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, the right place, right time, right sequence of events. I happened to need a job when, the internet was, I was getting, printouts for people and cleaning viruses off of disks and upgrading with floppies to Windows 95 in a lab. And my boss was like, I didn't want to learn internet. And so I was like, learn how to make websites. So I started doing that. But it's all been like, that was my idea for a career. And then I just kind of said, well, let me put all this together in my day to day. And that's kind of led to the book. I did one presentation at Demo Fest, which, people, if you see Demo Fest, it's a great event, go to it. But I presented Demotainment. I pitched it. They accepted. I was like, first of all, I was like, wow, okay, they like my idea. Great. And so I had a couple months to come up with it. And then it resonated so well with people at the conference that I thought, well, maybe there's more to this. Maybe I could do more with it. And, Amazon makes it really easy to publish a book. And so I put it all together. I don't sleep much. So that helped me out a lot with a lot of those late nights writing. And yeah, here we are. And so far the response has been great. And I just want to thank anyone who's here that's already bought a copy and left a review. Up to 10 reviews. Hey man, I'm happy about that. I got 10 reviews.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's really what brought me here. And you can, I guess it comes through, right? I mean, I have a high energy personality, and I don't drink any coffee or anything like that. I went to the movies at 10:30 last night after going to the gym. So I got home at a little after 1, got up at 7, and got a glass of water in front of me, and I'm good to go.
You're just a high energy guy. Well, Mike, first of all, amazing to me that you were at Hertz or with Hertz for 22 years. I mean, for anybody to be with any company in this day and age for that long is amazing, particularly for a guy with your kind of high energy. And by the way, I got to say hello to a few folks. Melanie Flores says, love that you're in theater background or have a theater background. Melanie, nice to see you.
Hey, Melanie.
And somebody gave me a shout out. It just says LinkedIn user. So I don't know who that is, but thank you for the shout out. Folks, we do not see who's out there. So if you do care to say hello, please feel free to do so. If you care to ask Mike or myself, but Mike's the star of today's show. If you care to ask Mike a question, please, by all means, do so. Mike, I told you I love the book. And honestly, when I was planning for today's or thinking about today's conversation, I thought I don't even know where to go now because I love so much of what he wrote. I did underline a couple of things that I'm going to invite you to. First of all, this is actually in the foreword written by, I believe, a CEO that you worked with, Andy McMillan, the CEO of Alteryx, writes, and I thought this was a really great quote. Demos are often the pivotal moment in the selling process, the point where the product must live up to the promise of the pitch. He went on to say, this is where Mike excels. He doesn't just showcase a product, he brings it to life. Like if you're in this business and that doesn't give you goosebumps, I don't know what will. So Mike, I'm going to invite you to respond to that first comment that Andy wrote.
Yeah. The forward that Andy wrote me was amazing. I can't thank Andy enough. I kind of am in a unique situation, maybe not so much, but with user testing, because of the fact that user testing, for those who don't know, it is the leading experience research platform in the world. So essentially, if I'm going to go in front of a client, let's say my client is you, Chris. I'm pitching to Chris later today. I'm going to go out to your sales training website. I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to say, what do people in the sales world think of this website? Is he likely to get clients from this? And I can go out and recruit sales professionals and get them to give me think out loud feedback on your site or a service or something, one of your sessions they attended, et cetera. And then I can take that and I can bring it into my demo. So I make my demo come to life by making it personalized, but it's also like, it feels like I just got this stuff yesterday, which I would have normally in a demo. And so I do that. I show all my products live. I've got to put my money where my mouth is. If I'm not willing to, I saw there's a LinkedIn thread. It pops up every now and again. I can't remember who posts it, but it's like, do you dare risk a live demo with your product? And then it's like about how you shouldn't do that maybe, or ways to backups if you don't want to do that. And I'm like, my feeling is, if I'm not willing to show my product live, how can they, if I don't trust it to do it live in a demo, how can they trust it to run their business? So I do that. I try to make it engaging. I try to make it relevant and personalized. And that's really what it is. Andy happened to sit in on a couple of demos. Like they tapped me to do the Forester demo, like for the Forester wave in our industry. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is like high pressure.
It's big. Yeah.
So I kind of just treated it though, just like any other demo. And I was prepared, obviously, but I'd done the demo many, many times over. So you're just doing an overview of your platform, what your capabilities are, what the value is. And we ended up getting rated #1 in that. So I felt pretty good about that. But yeah, Andy was just a great mentor, advisor. He's a great leader of user testing. And, I just hope he's doing great over at Alteryx now.
Yeah. So love that. And, it's interesting you mentioned that. I know one of the things that really helped catapult my career. I had been in pre-sales for about 5 years, and I joined a new company and I actually took over the management role, but I was still a little bit of a player coach. And the CEO reached out to me to do the Gartner. At the time, it was the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and we were in the enterprise architecture space. So it was the EAMQ. It was something that, and this particular company had been, I think they were in like the niche player quadrant, the quite a few years running. But they asked me to do the demo, and then that year we catapulted into the leadership quadrant, and that made a significant sort of, or that was sort of a milestone in my career. So for any SE, if you get the opportunity to be involved in the analyst, whether it's Forrester or Gartner, what have you, I'm going to read another quote that I'd like to invite you to elaborate on. And I'm reading. I'm on page 13. It's the introduction. And you're talking about demos, where I realize the best demos aren't just about showing features. They're about connecting emotionally, solving problems, and leaving a lasting impression. Do you care to elaborate on that statement, Mike?
Yeah. So, I like to use this example. When it comes to showing the product, like we've all sat in, hopefully I'm not dating myself too much, but if anyone's seen Ferris Bueller here, Ben Stein,
one of my favorite, one of my all-time favorite movies.
Bueller. A lot of demos go like that, or someone's just reading a script. It's very clear. This is just rehearsed. It's just, you're just this stop on the train tour, and that is not going to leave a lasting impression. The impression it's going to leave is, man, that was boring. Man, that was not enjoyable. I don't have any idea how that's relevant to me. And when it comes to really connecting, you have to think about who you're presenting to, and not just like, hey, it's Chris White. He's an author. He's the OG. Everyone, he's got so many followers, all this stuff. It's what is going to matter to Chris, and so I try to say, like, all right, if I happen to be a networking solution, whatever, I'd be like, so let me guess, I'm assuming you're in like a hotel room right now and whatever, and we start talking and you're like, yeah, like, how's the Wi-Fi? Pretty spotty, and they're charging you extra for this, right? Well, what if I could give you whatever the satellite, T-Mobile's got, they advertise their new satellite connectivity over the Super Bowl, these kind of things. So it's finding things that connect, because I don't know if everyone's the same way. I know neurologically, whatever, you remember things more when you have some kind of emotional firing at the same time. And so if you can make that connection, it's not just about a product. It's like, oh yeah, that guy we were talking about, like the networking and hotel stinks and whatever. There's something that you can remember on top of the product about, I hate to use the old adage. I know I wrote in the book too, and everybody talks about it. People don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. And if people walk out of the demo and they go, man, that was like the best demo I've seen in a long time, and that was great. There's somebody, Kelly Cohn from Consensus. She's a salesperson, and she reached out to me with an outbound message. This might have been before I did the Demo Fest, and her messaging was so good that I wrote back to her and I said, look, I don't have any, I'm not the buyer right now. I don't think we have anything to spend. But I think your outbound was so good. Do you mind if I do a video about your outbound messaging? Would you be upset about it? And, I still remember, I can't remember exactly what was in it, but she used a lot of good techniques. Dr. Robert Cialdini would be proud, but she used some good techniques in her outbound. And I remember to this day here, I'm talking about it in a conversation with you, that it was such a strong outbound that it did something to me. It made me feel, because of how well I thought she did the techniques and things. And it's just finding that thing, finding something to connect with. A lot of people, even if you're the SC, people think, oh, you keep your mouth shut until the AE taps you and lets you talk. It's like, no. If I get on the call before the AE, I'm going to make a connection right away with the person who's there on Zoom, and finding something, looking for little things in the background. There was a guy once, I remember, just off in the back, sort of like I could see he was in his bedroom clearly, on his bedside table, like way behind him. I thought I saw like what looked like a carved elephant, some kind of a carved elephant statue. And I asked him, I was like, hey, is that a elephant in the background over there? And he's like, it is actually. So then I ran over to my shelf and I grabbed a carved elephant that I have and I brought it over. And I was like, yeah, man, I used to live in Africa when I was a teenager. And so here, check this out. I'm like a real affinity for elephants and this kind of thing. So it's making those little connections, and whatever you can find can really do the trick. And then when you get into your demo, you've already started making that connection and they're listening like, oh, this guy's just like me. This girl's just like me. We have a lot of similar interests. They're going to do right by me. Let's see what they have to say.
Yeah. Well, it's being human in our jobs. One of the things that I love saying is people buy from people, period. And by the way, I have to give props to Ron Whitson.
There he is.
Ron popped by for a moment. He said that he and I love this. Ron just got a new job, so he's like, I got to get back to work. He's gonna catch the recording. So Ron, I don't think you're on now, but when you hear the recording, you'll hear that we gave you some props. But and for those of you who don't know, so Ron wrote. In fact, I think Ron has a quote on the back of Mike's book. Ron recently published A Friendly Human in Pre-Sales, and I helped Ron a little bit with his book. Ron then helped Mike a little bit with his book. So they're sort of like a, pass it forward, thing, going on here, which I absolutely love. But at the end of the day, that's what you're talking about, Mike. You're talking about just being human in your role, making human connection. By the way, does it guarantee that they're going to buy from you? Of course not. But at the very least, they will be more plugged in. They will be more likely to want to hear what you have to say. They will be more likely to remember and it gives you certainly a better chance. So absolutely love that. By the way, Mike, let me just take another pause for a moment. Carlos Munoz says hello. Love the sentiment. Live is powerful. Carlos has been on the show before. Rich Polton, he's a member of the 6 Habits certification. Hopefully it's a good, lasting impression. Will says, and Melanie said last week I saw, very, very well. That's actually a crazy story, Melanie. You saw a picture on the wall, and it was the exact same picture in her house. By the way, folks, I'll again invite you to say hello if you care to do so. We don't see who's out there. Love hearing from you, and of course, welcome you to ask any questions of Mike. Okay, I'm gonna give another quote. I'm gonna pull a few more quotes, and then I'm gonna invite you to just share a few other things. Like I said, you and I could talk for 6 hours, but you don't have the time. I don't have the time, and I don't think our audience has the appetite. Because at the end of the day, the best demos aren't just presentations. They're experiences worth remembering. All right, take that a little bit further.
So one of the things that I do is I painted a scenario for you a second ago with, I'm going to get you some feedback on your website or maybe some of your training. So when you think about going and see a demo, a lot of times I remember for years, I would get pitched by the same company. Every time they came in, they used the same demo environment, like the same demo website, statistics, things that they were showing. And it was like a bicycle shop thing. And, I was working for Hertz, like show me some car rental, something or other, show me something interesting. And nothing ever really made a mark. But if I told you, if I showed you live 3 people who were, 6 Habits certified, who said, yeah, I like this, but I really wish you would have dug into this a little bit more. You're going to leave that demo going like, well, I left that demo with something actionable. Like I didn't just see something, I learned something. So I think of every customer interaction as an opportunity to give. So what am I giving? Like if I'm doing outbound, if I'm helping do outreach, what am I giving in that outreach? If I ask for a meeting, What am I giving you? What are you going to walk away from that meeting with? And, you know, I know, again, I'm in a situation where I can give valuable insights that you can walk away with, but there's always little ways that you can say, hey, here's a research report on this. Here's something on that. And for me to do an experience as I walk through a demo, 9 times out of 10, I'm showing something that they don't know. So I'm able to say, hey, look, this is the journey from your homepage to your shopping cart. And did you know that people are saying a bunch of negative things when they get to this step because they can't understand how to do subscribe and save or whatever it might be. So every step of the way, I'm kind of trying to keep them like I'm showing them features, but I'm also trying to teach them things that they've also seen. Now, at the same time, they might go, you know, I think to Rich's point here, you know, is it a good impression, right? What happens, and I'm just going to throw in something from later in the book. What happens if you get an objection and they go, yeah, so what? Like, I know all that already. Like, you're not telling me anything I don't know. You're not so smart. And then it's kind of like, okay, now are you able to handle that objection? And what do you say? And there was one that this is a real situation. And, you know, it's not like I rehearsed these things, but it did happen in real life. And I was talking to a product manager and I showed him a bunch of insights and he said, yeah, we know all that. And I said, you know what? I actually kind of figured you might, because when I was a product manager, it wasn't that I didn't know things. It was that I didn't have the credibility that I wanted in my organization. And so I would tell people these things, they wouldn't listen. So they bring in, you know, some high-priced consultant who would tell them the same thing, or I'd tell the consultant and the consultant would tell them, and then they would listen. So imagine if you have that same conversation, but you have the customer in your pocket. Like, you bring the customer with you to say, here's what we need to do, and here's why. Here's the customer saying the exact same thing that I'm saying. And now all of a sudden your credibility goes way up. And that all of a sudden it went from a so what to a, oh yeah, this is gonna help me, not my company, but me. And that's another thing that people often, you know, we overlook when it comes to the way we do demos, the way we pitch value, is there's 2 different kinds of value that we should be pitching, depending on who we're talking to. The higher up you go, the more resonant that corporate value is going to be, the thing, like the bottom line and all these things. But when you're pitching to an IC or maybe a first line manager, it's kind of like, yeah, that's important, but also what's in it for me? Like, what am I going to get out of this? And, you know, we used to tell people directly, like, hey man, this tool is going to help you get promoted. You know, this is going to help you get promoted. And so recognizing who it is and delivering for the individual and the group is going to leave a lasting impression. And if you can personalize it, like teach them something about their business. And with AI and research tools, Perplexity, whatever it is, you can find out a ton about companies now and problems they've had. And you can just go right at those problems in your demo, so that it's you're not inventing a problem to solve, you're solving a problem, or you're helping solve a problem, or through discovery, you learned about problems that you're now going to solve. So it's, don't be just canned, out of the box scripted, make it relevant and, you know, add some pep to it. And, you know, people will, you know, a lot of these people aren't used to energy. It's really weird, but they're not. And so when you come in with high energy, and then usually at the end, I told you the coffee thing right up front, but at the end, I would just go, by the way, guys, I only slept like 4 hours last night. I went to the movies at like 11 and they got home at 1, and I didn't drink any coffee today, just a glass of water. So that's how much I love what I do. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. And they're like, wow, yeah, it really came through. You really love it. And it's not, it's genuine. It's not fake. It's not an act. But yeah, that's kind of how I like to leave my audience, you know. And like on stage, you want to be the big crescendo at the end, and then boom, you build up to it, and then, you know, you sit back and wait for them to ask for a statement of work.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Mike, you're saying so many things that my mind is just firing in 100 different directions. The thing that comes to mind immediately is you do have a unique set of talents and skills. I mean, let's just call it what it is. I mean, you're a high energy guy. You're at the movies. You're up early. You don't drink coffee, right? That being said, one of the things that I love, one of the many things I loved about your book is in one of the latter chapters, you talk about being a performer, and you say, hey, look, you don't, like, I'm a high energy guy. And by the way, as am I. And I say this all the time, you know, like I'm waving my hands and I'm gregarious and I'm not going on all those things. You don't have to be a great, quote, performer in front of your audience. You don't have to be outgoing, and it might feel even a little bit uncomfortable, but you can still adopt and apply some of these ideas, many of these ideas around demotainment, even if you're not the most outgoing person in the world. And that's what I absolutely love. You've taken what frankly probably comes naturally to you, right? And distilled it down to some very easy to follow steps.
Yeah.
There's another thing that you said, Mike, that I want to double click on, because I want to make sure everybody got it, because it is one of the most quotable quotes I've heard in a while. Every customer interaction is an opportunity to give. I think that is so critical. And I mean, and this is just another way in which you and I are so much alike. And even to this day, in doing what I'm doing now, I don't give demos anymore, but of course I'm still in sales. I'm selling all the time. But particularly when I was in the field and I was giving demos, this was my attitude. Whether they decide to work with us or not, whether they decide to buy from us or not, I want them to walk away from the next 30, 60, 90 minutes feeling as though that was well worth their time. Whether they liked, whether they decided, and I'm guessing that you have a very similar mindset, that this, no matter what, I'm going to put all my energy to make this worth their time. Is that a fair read on my part?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll say I even take it a little step further. And I tell people, because a lot of times everyone's been in an RFP before, right? Most people. And, the client or the prospect is usually very wary of telling you who else they're looking at, whatever. And I say, look, you don't have to worry about, and again, everything I say comes from movies, right? So I go, if you've seen Miracle on 34th Street, I'm like Santa Claus. Like, I'll tell you if it's cheaper down the block. I'll tell you if there's another solution that's better, because if you only want this one little bit, then yeah, I mean, there's no point in you buying my solution. You should go get this other thing. It's entry level. It's what you want.
I'm sure the sales guys or sales folks you work with, they love it when you say that.
Not well, you know what? It's kind of funny because it's also like it's one of those things where it doesn't chase people away as much as you think it would, because it sounds 100%. Like you want to be the trusted advisor. You don't just want to be a pre-sales engineer doing a demo. You want to be a consulting partner, whatever. I mean, we're building relationships. I'll say this. I've sat across and bought software from a lot of I don't know if we're allowed to use. I'll use borderline really shitty account teams. Like teams that I used to say that they phishing, they hook you, they reel you in for 3 months, and then they throw you in the cooler and shut the lid. And then they'll open the lid when it comes renewal time. And I've dealt with a lot of that. And I had a great experience with an account team over at Oracle when they were selling me the Maximizer tool. And that really taught me what an account team could be like and how you should engage with a customer. And that whole product doesn't exist anymore, but I still keep in touch with all the people from my account team from that relationship, even though it was 5-6 years ago. Same thing with user testing. User testing, I was only a customer for 1 year. I was a customer for 1 year, like 10 years ago. And I got a new VP and he wanted to bring in a different tool. He didn't want to use, you can only argue so many times you get a new leadership. But I said, okay, fine. But I never lost touch with my sales rep. And my sales rep actually did the referral to bring me into user testing 5 years after I was his customer. Amazing. So that's what I want it to be like. And so, I think that whether it's for good or bad, people bring me in to do like, hey, can you do a training? Can you do this? Can you just teach people how to do it? I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of times there's arguments about pre-sales and post-sales and, this isn't revenue generating. So you really shouldn't be doing it. And I just say like, look, as soon as someone signs a deal, I'm in renewal mode. So everything I do between now and a year from now is going to contribute to whether or not they renew as an account, whether or not they grow, expand, give us referrals. So I'm all about that. Yeah, 100%. I wanted to just touch on the one thing that you said earlier, the presenter concept. And I was torn, should I put that at the beginning or put it at the end? And I thought, let me put it at the end. And when people are doubting that they could do these things, I wanted to like reassure everybody. And I didn't put her name in the book, but I picked my son up from college. Last year, end of college, I picked him up, took him and his girlfriend out to lunch, and I was asking how to go. And she said, well, I just did my final presentation and I wasn't really that thrilled with it. Hazel, if you ever see this, I'm saying your name. And I said, well, what went wrong? And she said, well, I kind of felt like I was a little bit robotic. People said maybe I was a little robotic during the thing. I said, well, okay, let me ask you a question. I said, it's going to sound weird, but I said, who presented? She goes, well, it was me and my team. And I go, no. When you were presenting, who presented? And she said, well, I did. And I go, that's your problem right there. Like, you shouldn't have presented. You should allow yourself to become a presenter, like play a role of the presenter. Free yourself from your inhibitions and your imposter syndrome, like I mentioned earlier, and just go on stage and be like, you've seen a TED Talk, go be that, go do that. And it goes back to, she was kind of looking at me like, yeah, actually, that's a good idea. That would have been better yesterday to know, whatever. But if we think about one of the more famous stories about corporate management is Disney, and the way that every employee at Disney is referred to as a cast member. And, whether you're running the checkout at like a store inside Disney World, or or you're actually one of the dancers in one of the shows, or you're Cinderella, or whoever it is, you are playing a role of a character, of a Disney employee, trying to make someone have the happiest experience in the happiest place on earth, that sort of thing. And that's exactly what doing a demo is, or acting is. Because when you look at someone who goes on stage on Broadway or what have you, those people that's not their mood. That's their character's mood. And yeah, the worst thing in the world might have happened to them, or they might have just won the lottery, but they got to go on stage. And if they have to act depressed or happy or whatever, that's the show that they're putting on. And when you embody sort of the role of the presenter, you're allowing yourself to do that. So even if you're not super high energy, if your presenter is high energy and you can go and do that, or even when I say high energy, it might just be like one octave higher than you normally are. Just go up a little bit, or just enunciate or inflect a little bit more, emote. And so, like you were talking about using your hands a lot. Like, some people don't talk with their hands a lot, but when they're presenting, they do maybe big hand movements. They do different things. They have different gestures, and it's 100%. all part of like the character that we can play. I think I said at Demo Fest, I was like, if you think, yeah, I'm very high energy, but if you think I act like this all the time, it would be exhausting. I would pass out. But it's something you should free yourself up to do. And it's totally normal to try to perform your demo. Don't just go through the motions. I mentioned the Ben Stein thing before, and I often contrast that with, if anyone's seen Dead Poet Society, Robin Williams in Dead Poet Society, he's a very different kind of teacher. He acts out everything. He's doing voices, bringing the class, he always says, huddle up to the boys in the class, brings them in, lets them know this is going to be important. Brings his voice down, carpe diem. He tells them over the pictures. And you're talking about leaving them with an experience they'll never forget. In the movie, when they have that first lesson and he takes them out to show them like the sports trophies and the pictures of all the other kids that have long since passed away. And like, they've never had a teacher do anything even remotely close to that. And I'm sure we all have a teacher, hopefully, in your life that did something like that to you. I remember I was doing Model UN at Harvard. I didn't go to Harvard, but in high school, Harvard hosts the Model UN thing. It was the first time I ever did it. And a teacher came in, and I'd done this whole thing where I made my whole argument about why we shouldn't be dumping toxic waste in Zaire, now the Congo. I was the Congo at this, by referencing Blinky, the three-eyed fish from The Simpsons. And so my teacher comes over and he's like, you're effing good at this. And I was like, wow. I'm like, first of all, he curt, which was like, that's the level of compliment that I got. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it always is a way to be a performer, be a presenter, do this, free yourself. And it resonates with people. Sorry, I went on a really long time there.
Dude, I mean, look, Mike, first of all, there's a reason you're on the show. It's because you're good at what you do, and you've got a lot of things to say. And I just love listening to you. The only problem is you are saying so many great things that I want to double click on to make sure that nobody's losing. But before we go too much further, I do want to just double click on something that Carlos chimed in with. He said clients will clock a fake. Couldn't be yourself and be genuine. If you're more low key, that doesn't preclude you from being engaging. And I think this is really what you're saying. The word that's coming to mind for me is amplify. I think we need, and by the way, because and you may or may not recall, habit number 5 in my 6 habits is to perform. So again, I mean, you and I are so locked in terms of the way we think. And I tell this to people all the time. It doesn't mean we're pretending to be somebody else. We have to be our authentic selves. But I believe, and this is precisely what you're talking about, and I say this all the time, there's a difference between backstage conversations and on-stage conversations. And when we're on stage, there's a certain energy level that we need to bring to the moment, right? There's certain things we need to say, show, and do. There's certain things we avoid saying, showing, and doing, right? Which is precisely what we're talking about here. So, and Rich asked a question that I want to go back to because it's a fabulous one. But before I go there,
yes.
what Rich is saying here too is such a big part of it. If you don't believe in the product you're selling, more importantly, if you don't believe in the problems or have some passion for solving the problems that your solution solves, and you can't actually get, it's hard to fake it, right? So such a good point, Rich. Now, and I saw that Melanie just made a comment, but I want to go to Rich's question because it's a fabulous one. This is something that I've been asked before. This is something that I've run into before. Do you ever find that your energy level doesn't resonate with the audience, Mike? And if so, how do you handle it? Great question, Rich.
I will thank you for, and I actually just I was talking to another coworker about this morning, where I was being me and I made a joke. Humor is great in calls until it isn't. And the person on the other end just like stared at me, just stared blankly. And instead of just dropping it, I tried to explain the joke and it didn't work. And afterwards I got an email saying like, please don't do that. Like, don't be like that. That's not appropriate. And it wasn't an inappropriate joke. It was not inappropriate anyway. It was just like, he didn't like that I was making a joke. And so you have to just go, okay, I hear you. I understand. And you just keep going. Same thing with the believing in the product that you're doing. We all sometimes have a feature or something we have to demonstrate that we don't like. Sometimes it's good to demonstrate it as if it's the greatest thing in the world. And other times it's also really good to be honest, because when you're talking so highly about your product and then you go, yeah, this feature, no one really uses this feature, but this is what it's good for. So if you need this is going to be a great way to do it. So again, honesty is key, but you were going to say something else there, Chris.
Yeah, no. You're so spot on. And look, I mean, and people, and you may recall this from my book, one of the things I like to say is thou shalt not voluntarily confess thy sins, right? Meaning we shouldn't be leading with, I've literally heard demos start with, well, let me point out what we can't do first. Why on earth right? But on the flip side, there's a certain power of saying no, right? If they, well, can it do this? And it's minor. Well, actually, no, it can do this, but it can't do that. Is that going to be a problem? Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. I do want to click on Melanie's note because I just took a moment. She said they're having a watch party at work. There's 8 of us doing lunch and learn in a conference room. So Melanie and all of your colleagues there in the watch party, thank you so much for being here. I think this is an absolute, at least as far as I know, it's a first that we actually have a group of folks in an office watching together. So Melanie, thank you for sharing that. I want to go back to something you said a moment ago, and you probably didn't even realize you said it because you're just so bloody good at it. You made an analogy of working with certain sales reps where they get you on the hook, they reel you in, they throw you in the bucket, and they throw you in the pail, and then they close the lid, and they don't go back to you until you. That is, first of all, it's a brilliant analogy. Second of all, there's a term that I use called word pictures. In fact, I'm going to be doing a workshop tomorrow for Gong here in Salt Lake City, and we're going to be talking all about. And word pictures are just a fancy way of saying analogies, and there are analogies that people can easily relate to, and it helps us understand. You use the term in the book schemes. Am I right? Schemas. Can we talk a little, because I think that's one of the very specific techniques that you offer in the book that is incredibly powerful. And to be fully transparent, the term schema it's just a term that I had not heard of. So I'm using the term right? You were using schema to refer to basically analogies, right?
Schema is a model that your brain already knows. It's something that you're already aware of.
Okay.
So full credit. The concept is delved into in great depth in Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath, another great book out there. But when it comes to the entertainment industry, there's a story, and I think I put this in the book. It's very famously when the movie Speed. Everyone, I think most people know the movie Speed. You did, and I love it. Keep going. It's a great example. He's on the bus, and there's a bomb on the bus. If it slows down, it's going to blow up. And how do you pitch a movie? These guys hear stories all day long. Hey, make my movie, make my movie. And all they went in, they said was, it's Die Hard on a bus. And everyone was like, all right, yeah, we got to make that. Like, Die Hard, but it's a movie. So that it allows you to instantly connect your product to a mental model that somebody already has. And I also talk in the book about the way I actually do this in real life is you have to have a start point. And you always want to start on level ground with your prospect. Make sure that before you start talking, you both understand where you are. And so because one of the visualizations that can be more complex in user testing, it looks like something from Google or Adobe. I ask people, since mostly people that are doing insights work have used maybe Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, and I say, hey, has anybody used Adobe? So I'm very overt about it. Has anyone used these tools, one of these tools? And inevitably one or two people raise their hand. I go, okay, so you're familiar with like a unique path report or a path analysis. Oh yeah, that's what this is. Except we take that concept and we add on to it a lot. And that's where the baby steps concept comes in as well, where you take something they know, then you add little by little so that you make sure you're not going over somebody's head. Because as much as we'd like to, we don't stop. We don't all stop as much as we should to engage with the audience, which again, I talk about that. But the audience doesn't stop you if they don't know, because one of the things, and we've all done this, think back to fourth grade, you don't want to ask a question because asking a question means that you don't know. And that might mean that you're dumb or something. People will think badly of you if you didn't understand. And it's really just the worst thing in the world to think that. You should always stop and ask a question. But if you make sure that you start on even ground where things people understand, and then you could go little by little. Now, I think in the book Made to Stick, they talk about how would you describe a grapefruit? Like just take a crack at it, Chris. How would you describe a grapefruit in a way that I know, that I could frame it by something else?
Have you ever had an orange?
Okay, keep going.
It's similar. It's similar to an orange. It's a little bit bigger. They usually are a little pinker, and they're a little bit more sour.
That is exactly what is in the book. And I haven't read that book in maybe 18 years or so. I think I read it when it first came out, but that's exactly it. So now it's very easy to understand if you know what an orange is. Oh, it's bigger and sour and pink and what? Okay, I got it. Yep. So that's sort of the idea. It is funny though that you said schemes at first, but no, that's a different thing entirely.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, again, and this is beneficial for me, and it's possible that I just missed that specific point. I very quickly got what the reference was,
yeah.
And it's incredibly powerful, and I talk about it all. And I've learned even about myself that that's just one of the ways that makes my ability to communicate more effective. I mean, virtually anybody who's ever heard me talk knows probably my favorite analogy. He or she who buys a shovel doesn't want a shovel, they want a hole, right? But they don't just want a hole, they want a faster tree, right? So, but when you use the word schema, I just wasn't familiar with that term.
Yes.
And I think it's just an incredible, it's another good example of one of the very specific techniques that you include in the book. There's another one, and you just mentioned something about asking questions. And again, this is where, I mean, the way we think is just so similar. Now you use the term, I think you call them, are they visionary questions?
Visualization questions.
Visualization questions. Now in my book, I call this the mini close. And in essence, it's asking questions that are basically inviting some acknowledgement that, yes, we've answered the mail. Yes, you could see yourself using this. Yes, I can imagine. So elaborate on what you mean by visualization questions.
Yeah. So at the end, you have a couple of ways that you could end a demo, right? And a lot of times what we fall victim to is we just say, hey, so any questions? Did you guys understand that? Was that okay? Yeah, okay, it was great. Oh, thanks. And you're patting yourself.
And then we go away. Yep.
Yeah, great job. But what a visualization question does is it allows the audience to participate again in another way that may also increase the engagement and the lasting nature of that, and actually may lead to a sale. This is one of those things that may lead to a sale, because instead of saying, "Did you enjoy that?" I might go, "So, Chris, what I just showed you," because at the end I will have just shown like how to build the thing that I showed. I'll say, "Did I just show you anything that you couldn't do?" He'll say, "No, that looked pretty easy." I go, "So what would be like the first thing you would run a test on? What would be the first way you would use this?" And you would go, "Well, we actually are doing this new thing, and I could run that. I could build the thing and get the audience." and then build the test, then yeah, that would be great. It would be really helpful. So what I've done is I'm creating a lasting image of the prospect already using my product. So they're thinking about themselves using the product and seeing themselves being successful in their minds with my product. And so now that is part of leaving a lasting impression, other than beyond just, did you like it? Not only do they have a lasting impression, now they're thinking, I need the product so I can do that thing. And so now when it comes time to scoping and figuring out the size of the solution and what's right, you've kind of already gotten past the, like, am I going to get it? No, my brain already says I have it and I can do this with it and I need to do this. So now how do I get it? How do I finish getting it? So that's what a visualization question is. There's lots of different ways you can ask questions, but it's like, can you see yourself using this product? And like the one that I just said, what would you use it for? What's the first thing you'd use it for? Because then they're gonna tell you something that's really painful for them, something that's really a challenge, and then you can re-engage with that later. It's a little bit of discovery sort of sprinkled in the end there.
Yeah, no, it's fabulous. And again, I have a term that I call the mini close, and it's there are subtle differences, but it's such a powerful way to really draw out. And to me, this is how we find out, have we achieved the technical win, or how close are we to, quote, the technical win, as I like to call it, right? And in fact, I might ask something like, do you see how what I've shown you is going to help you address these problems that we talked about earlier in the conversation, right? And you might get a very closed off no. You might get a very enthusiastic yes. More likely, you're going to get something in between. More likely, you're going to get something that sounds like, well, I mean, we did see how we can do this, but I'm still not sure if we understand how. And now they're literally telling you what else they need to see in order to become convinced, right?
Exactly, and that's we talked about objections a little bit ago, and it's almost like you're not inviting an objection, but you are, and you're giving yourself an opportunity to hear if what went wrong. If something went wrong, what was it? Let me hear about it. And I love what you just said, like they're all excited and happy. Yeah, I'm so excited. There is something, again, it's in Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, called the consistency principle, the consistency model of persuasion. And this is another benefit of of visualization questions, is that our brains are hardwired for consistency. We want to behave in a consistent way. We want to respond in a consistent way. If we're a nice person, we always want to try to be nice because that's who we are. So when someone shows excitement and joy and they're loving the product and they say, yeah, I can see myself using it, this is what I'd use it for. Well, when you do the follow-up, then you're able to re-engage with that mode and say, hey, Chris, when we closed out the last demo, you were really excited. You talked about using it for this. You said, yeah, it was really easy to use for the team. And, so now it's time to move forward. Let's start scoping this. And your brain is hardwired for consistency, going, yeah, I did love that. I did think it was great. And this is not trickery. I want to be very clear. This is not manipulation, trickery. It's just if somebody expressed those things, you want to capitalize on that. You want to hold on to that and help them to relive those emotions, when you follow up, by reminding them how they felt when they saw your demo and the things they said. And if you don't know what they said because you didn't ask them to visualize, you're going to have a much harder time connecting it again on the follow-up, because it'll just be like, yeah, you saw my demo and you thought it was good. Well, that's not really connecting me back to anything that I felt back then. So anyway.
So again, using a term that you've now introduced me to, which is a schema, it's sort of like you're coming back, and it's almost like you're pulling out a picture to say, remember how much fun we had when we did such, like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot. That was really fun, right? That's exactly what we're talking about. Folks, Mike, I'm just going to push pause just for one last time. Folks, I'm speaking to Mike McDowell. He is a senior solution consultant with user testing. He is the author of a book called Demotainment, and we've been, and there it is. And I am proud to have apparently the second ever signed copy. So I'm very, very proud of my copy of this book. If you missed the first part of this conversation, I am going to emphatically say again, don't walk, run to the nearest computer and log into Amazon.com and find this copy, this book, and place an order. It's a great read. It's an easy read, and you will. I am willing to guarantee your next demo will be better as a result, and you will have more fun giving it. That is a guarantee coming from me, and I have zero skin in the game. So get yourself a copy.
Can I put
and by the way,
on the Amazon description?
you are more than welcome. You are more than welcome to quote me if you need to. You can replay that quote. I think that highly of this book. Folks, we've got just a few minutes left. So if you want to chime in with a final hello and or goodbye, that's okay too. If you want to chime in with a quick question for Mike, you're welcome to do that as well. We are going, as I like to say, the landing gear is out, the runway is in sight. We're going to be landing this plane here in just a few minutes. Mike, if I can do so quickly, I'm going to see if I can find.
Can you bring up, while you're doing that, can you bring up Rich's last comment here about refreshing to be reminded? Can you bring that up on screen for everybody?
Yes, of course.
So I just wanted to address this one, Rich. Thanks for posting this. We're all constantly learning. We're all different. Our approach won't always resonate. And the really important thing I wanted to say about this is demotainment is just one method, right? It's not the only way you're going to be successful. I don't claim to be have the secret answer to everything. It's just, this is what's really worked for me. And because it resonated with some people that had heard about it or heard it at Demo Fest, I thought, well, let's share it. There's many methods that work out there. And the idea is pick the right one for you. And many times that's going to be picking little bits of all different methods and all different books. There's so many great pre-sales resources out there and trainings and things like that. Thanks for pointing that out, Rich. And always being great on LinkedIn. Sorry.
It's a great, well, it is a great point. And look, I mean, I think you referenced Peter's book. Look, I read Peter's book probably maybe almost 20 years ago, maybe 17, 18, 19 years ago, something like that. There's a gentleman who I haven't talked to in a while named Brian Geary. He wrote a book called Demoing Software. I think Demoing Software so it'll sell. There's Just Effing Demo.
That's a great one. Love that one.
Also, I'm drawing by Rob Falcone is a good one. My book, I can't believe I'm saying this. My book has been out for over 5.5 years now. So, that's certainly, according to most people, a pretty good foundation.
Yeah.
Ron's book is a great one. A friendly human pre-sales, and now Mike's book. To me, there's at least a handful of books. John, you can't talk about books without mentioning John Kerr, the trusted advisor. So look, the fact that there are more books out there for people, and you're right, Mike, you take the pieces that will work for you and resonate for you. And a lot of us say similar things in different ways, right? And Mike, there's new ideas. There's ideas in your book that I think that I found myself thinking, dang, I should have put that in my book, because that's a really or I talked about that, but I didn't talk about that part of it. So Mike did. I mean, it's fabulous. By the way, you've referenced a book on influence a couple times. I want to make sure that people know the book you're referencing.
Yeah, it's actually called Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini. He just did I think it was 3 or 4 years ago that he came out with his latest edition. And he's also got another great book called Persuasion, which is I've listened to both audiobooks, and I actually read Influence with a highlighter because it was it's really long. And
is it Instant Influence? It's not the book.
It's just called
because Instant Influence is another one that I've read, which is fabulous. Okay.
Yeah. If you want an introduction to the book, I would tell you to just search his name and Freakonomics Radio. He does a great 1-hour interview that really sums up the whole book for you.
Freakonomics.
That's what turned me on to the book itself. It's a fantastic episode. I listen to it maybe once every 3 or 4 months. I re-listen to that one episode just because I want to just get juiced up again on it. But yeah, the other thing about books too is you don't have to confine please don't confine yourself to only pre-sales reading. I've read, Ninja Sales, and I've read, Challenger Sale, and I read everything about all kinds of AE books. And I got the Chief Customer Officer playbook, and, even things outside the sales world about messaging, and Story
100%.
Brand 2.0 is a great book. And there's just all great books can help you really hone your message. Seth Godin, I love his books. This is marketing he did a
Yeah.
couple years ago.
Love him. Yep. Daniel,
Great
I
book.
love Daniel Pink stuff,
Yeah,
To Sell
he's
is
great.
Human,
That's
Drive.
a great book.
All right, Mike, I have one final quote, and I'm gonna invite you to sort of close out the conversation hearing this. Great presenters know that demos are as much about connection as they are content.
This is kind of wrapping up what we've been talking about here. It's I remember everything that Chris said during this chat with me. I mean, I'm gonna remember some of them because they were very nice things. But I'm going to remember how Chris made me feel, the connection that we had. Chris said many times over, we think very similarly. We're very similar people. And that's all sticking in the back of my brain. And I promise this was not rehearsed, like Chris says. We're just doing this. So there's a lot of things that he's making me feel a certain way that's really resonating with me. It's going to stick with me. Same thing with Ron Whitson, Friendly Human in Pre-Sales, all about making that connection and having something to go back on, so that when I do go back to a customer, I do go back to somebody later, they remember not just my demo, but they remember that I was a good guy and that I had high energy and I made them feel good on the demo. And, they were bummed when it was over, and man, that guy has a lot of energy. I can't believe he doesn't drink coffee, that kind of thing. So hopefully just what I've said about, Chris, I think you did a great job of it today, creating, an experience and a connection with me that, we'd only spoken for 20 minutes before this, and not to rehearse, just to meet. And the connection I think we've made here, I think is going to stick. I really do appreciate it. And that's what we hope to do with our, this whole time he's probably trying to sell me. That's what it is. No, trying to make a connection with our customers. And funny enough, I'll end with this. So when he sees it, I didn't tell him yet, but Ron Whitson is now one of my customers. So I actually have to sell to him, but I'll give him a few months to get settled.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
To get settled into his job.
That is class. That is absolutely classic. I can't wait to hear about that. Mike, this has been fun. Will you come back sometime and spend a little more time with?
I'll come back anytime.
This audience. Awesome.
This has been so much fun. I love what we do. I feel like pre-sales, the industry, the way that we try to help people, it's what I was made for. I think my whole career up until I started doing pre-sales was all building me up to this. And now I'm just living the dream and getting to share a little bit with other people. And this has been fantastic. Awesome. Anytime you need me, I'm here, Chris.
All right, Mike, I'm gonna keep you to that. Mike, let me just quickly thank those folks who joined, Melanie and all her colleagues in the watch party over lunch, and Rich and Carlos and Alexander and a few others. I know Ron is probably gonna catch the recording. Thank you so much for being here live. If you have now sat through the recording, thank you so much for sitting through the recording. If you want to learn more about these programs, just follow Tech Sales Advice on LinkedIn. Of course, you can go to techsalesmastery.com to learn more about the work that we do. And in closing, I will encourage all of you, go to amazon.com. Find Demotainment, get yourself a copy. You will, if you're in this profession, you will not be disappointed. That is my guarantee. Mike, hang around backstage just for a moment as we say a few parting words. Absolutely. To everyone else, thank you for being here. Mike, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you on the next episode, folks.
Thanks, everybody.